Hello, my name is Abigail and welcome back to my channel. Today I am painting this piece with my Himi Gouache set and a little bit of my koi watercolors. I am trying something a bit different today. I was feeling in a bit of a fantasy mood, so I'm going to tape this down to this clipboard and then we're going to get rolling. I'm taping it down because I want really crisp edges, and I know some people tape right directly to their desk, but I like to move my paper around to get kind of a better angle with my hands and stuff, so I decided to tape it to a clipboard instead, so I could still move it and it's still taped down. I'm using washi tape because it's not as tacky as other kinds of tape, and I am familiar with this concept, so I am starting with an underpainting actually, and this is something I learned to do in college when I was taking a painting class. We only painted in oil paints, and I have just recently seen somebody else do an underpainting when they did a gouache painting. And I'm very new to gouache painting, and I realized with my last one that I had done, it didn't feel very cohesive, and I was wondering if maybe an underpainting would help. I think it did. I also think that I think I had a better idea too of what I was trying to do when I went in with this, but I loved it. Almost made me less afraid with the gouache doing this, just because I kind of already knew where my colors were gonna go, or at least the value of them, and this painting, just like doing this underpainting, really just made me not afraid, I guess, of anything at all, really, because I feel like with paint I'm always so petrified that I'm gonna mess it up. I don't, the gouache especially, like, what texture do I want it? Is it too runny? Is it too thick? I don't know, but having the paper completely covered already made me feel a lot better. Like, there's something about starting a painting, or like starting anything, looking at the white of the paper is really daunting, so I really enjoyed having something already down. So this painting, I didn't film the sketching process at all whatsoever, because I knew the painting process was going to be long enough. So yeah. But I was feeling fantasy. I don't know exactly what, but I was just thinking fairy-y, like magic foresty, and now I would have been great if I could have pushed myself a little more with adding magic elements to it, but I think that will kind of come in time. I'm not very backgrounds specifically are not my strong suit. It's something I want to get better at, and I think this painting was definitely a step in the right direction. And if you can hear anything in the background, my kitten is playing with her spring against like the wall in her litter boxes and stuff, so it's like plastic on plastic, so sorry about that. But anyway, so like I said, background's not necessarily my forte. Working on it, this painting turned out honestly how I expected, which is saying something, because usually I have way too high of expectations for how things actually end up turning out, and for this painting to actually meet expectations it felt really good, because usually I have this big plan, and even if it's a medium I'm unfamiliar with, I'll have this big plan of how I want it to look, and then I'll actually sit to do it, and I'm like, this isn't turning out anything like I want it to, and it's like, I just set too high goals for myself, especially when it's a new medium. So I'm definitely no expert with the gouache, but like I said, I'm still working in the watercolor right now, and this is koi watercolor. I'm not exactly sure the name of this color, but it's like a burnt sienna kind of color. Yeah, that's all I know, and I'm kind of just blocking in values where I would want my lighter colors, my darker colors, and my mid-tone colors. So the goal was to create a sense of depth in the forest. So the character and the two trees, like the tree on the from the second to the right and the tree farthest to the left, is supposed to be the closest, and all the trees from then, you know, to the middle are supposed to be farther and farther away. And I think I did a good job with it. Yeah, it's definitely improvement from past. So just, yeah, this whole piece, I had a great time with it. We're not even to the color part yet, but I am going to talk a bit about it. I didn't have any planned for any of the colors, really. I was thinking a cooler toned color scheme, greens, blues, purples, and that is what I ended up going with. For her dress, that was what was the trickiest part for me. I don't know what I pictured for her dress. The only thing I thought I kind of wanted it blending into the ground, almost as if like the dress is made out of the ground, or she's merging into it. I don't know. That didn't end up happening, just because I kind of started, I didn't know what I wanted past that. So yeah, it ended up being what it was. I definitely wish I would have thought about that before I went ahead and dove right in with the colors. I kind of wish I would have brainstormed that a little bit, because I didn't sketch the dress. The color of the dress. I just sketched, so the outline. So now I am starting with the gouache. I do try to cut out as much of the paint mixing process as I can, because A, you can't see most of it. It's kind of there off the screen. And B, it's really boring. So hopefully you don't have to see too much of that. But here I had mixed the color, and it ended up being, it was supposed to be for like the sky, the lighter parts between the trees, ended up being a little darker. Too dark, so I mixed in some white, and then I used that color for the trees instead then. And at first I start trying to paint around the branches, because I wanted the branches to be, like right there or whatever. I end up ignoring it eventually, because I just get so fed up with trying to paint around them, because that's definitely something that I noticed last time I had gouache painted, that I wasn't very great at like kind of thinking about the edges of the piece and having things kind of seamless, I guess. I'm not really used to having to worry about it. When I have painted in the past, I paint in oil, and everything's kind of wet long enough that after I'm done painting a section and then painting another section, the paints are all still fairly wet, and I can kind of dry brush them together. And the gouache paint would just dry so fast that working between the sections and then going back in with a dry brush just wasn't working. So I either had to be, confidently paint one color over the next to not have any seam between it, or try to mix the color exactly again later and try to fix it. And that, I didn't like the look of it, and it wasn't working out the best, so I just ended up painting over the branches instead of leaving like little patches of red for the seams. But anyway, lesson learned. I think it's one of those where I'll want to eventually, as I sketch, maybe take pictures, so that way I can reference the sketch as I'm painting. So it's okay if I paint over some of the details, because I know I can go back in and add them over top. I jumped a little bit because these little trees were tons and tons and tons of back and forth, because I got them all painted, and then I realized some of them were too dark. So then it was just layers and layers and layers of paint, and it would have been very, very boring to watch, considering it's not even the foreground, it was the background. So yeah, in the back, yes, I started with the just a blue, I think a touch of green, not that it really shows, and white. And then the color I'm using now is definitely more muted. I added in a touch of brown, a touch more of the green, and then more blue, less white, because I wanted the trees closest to us to not be blue. I wanted them to have a more realistic color to them, more of a brown color. So I thought I needed to use this tree as a transition from blue to a brown. And here too, I kind of wish I would have just colored over those. If I would have, you know, thought to take pictures and remember where I put certain details, I would have just colored over where those little mushrooms are supposed to be. So that way I could get a nice, like, seamless blend. But I didn't really think about it. I also know the trees weren't that straight, and that was something I decided to ignore intentionally, just because trees don't actually grow super straight, you know, like, you know, they either have knots on them, or sometimes they grow at an angle or whatever. So I was like, if they were too straight, that would feel unnatural. And that's not really my style. I feel like styles that can pull that off are ones that are kind of on the cartoony side, you know, where everything is already unrealistic enough that super straight trees is the least of their concerns. So I did have a lot of fun with this piece though. I definitely cannot wait to do some more painting with gouache. I definitely want to paint more in general. It's something that I've always liked to do, because actually long before I owned markers or had an iPad or whatever, the only way that I would color was either colored pencils or acrylic paint. And most of the time I would just paint. And a lot of times too, I didn't even sketch beforehand. I quite literally would just go in with acrylic paint and paint whatever I wanted. And it was very freeing as a child, I would say, you know. So I want to paint more. I want to make sure I have my oils out and paint, and I want to use the gouache paint more too. So it's something, definitely a bit of a goal for me this year, is to make sure I'm painting a little more. And this made me feel pretty good about it, so I can't wait to do more. And here I am with that bluier brown color. You know, I wanted it to be nice and dark and an actual brown. You will have to let me know in the comments if you have ever used gouache before, and if you have ever done an underpainting before. Yeah, so you just let me know that. I've only ever painted with gouache, completed illustrations a handful of times. I've used them more often than that. I use them in my bullet journal quite often, but I just kind of use them similar to like watercolors a lot. I have very few tips to add for gouache. I think for me it was paying attention to the consistency and kind of not being afraid to like scoop them out and mix them on a separate pan, because that's what I was like, oh gosh, you know, like I kept running out of colors because I wasn't mixing enough, because I was only mixing however much paint could fit on my brush. And eventually I got a little fed up with it, so I would grab a palette knife and I would just scoop out some and plop it onto my palette, and that made everything a lot better. And these are the Himi, like they're like a jelly gouache, so they've got a different consistency to them. Mine have gotten a little dry. I definitely recommend, it's on TikTok, somebody put their gouache, put a piece of plastic wrap, like saran wrap, in between the gouache and the lid. And I think I might have to do that. I usually open them up every so often and spray water in them anyway, so they're not too bad, but some of them are juicier than others. But I noticed the lid doesn't fit very well anymore. I don't know what, but it's kind of bowed a little bit, like it doesn't snap on as tight as I was hoping. But I really like these, and I would love to have more in the future. So now I am starting with the green. I did a fairly dark green because it's in the foreground. I was keeping all the foreground kind of dark. This is definitely where I hadn't thought very far ahead. So this is definitely where I was winging it the most in terms of color. I wanted to put moss on this tree, and so I did just kind of put some green on there, and I wish I would have done moss elsewhere or like wholly committed to the moss or something, but because it does end up just blending in. So here I am starting the dress, and like I said, I go into the dress with no plan whatsoever, so that's why I'm pulling up from the ground into the dress, and I was like, oh yes, and then I could make kind of a bit of a, I want to say it'd be like camouflage, but you know, just like very textured between the different colors, and I thought it was cute like at this stage, but by the time I filled the whole dress in, I definitely did not care for it. It just wasn't cute enough to be the main function, really. So I did end up adding something kind of different to it afterwards. I seem to have a visitor. So yeah, it was kind of at this point where I was starting to not really care for the way the dress was starting to look, but I didn't exactly know what else to do. So then I kind of thought, thinking back on it, what I would have loved to have done was almost have had the hem of her dress look like plants and leaves and have it be that dark green, but then kind of merge up into just kind of a different color, like almost a normal dress look. A lighter color, that's what I was thinking. Just kind of merged into like a lighter green almost, so it was a little less naturey and a little more actually like a gown. Almost like the bottom was embroidered. And so here I decide, I was blending them together, and I was like, actually, how about I make it lighter? So then I go in with a much lighter color to almost make that back part look like a little overlay, very drapey. Oh, yes. Okay, before I did that, I ended up painting her skin, and I was thinking about what color I would paint her skin, and because I was thinking kind of pale, just to kind of contrast the dress and the dark tree a little bit, and I realized I wanted to do it like a green. So that's when I wholly committed to the green skin, and then I do green hair as well. And I bust out this teeny tiny little paintbrush that I have to fill all that in, and painting the skin was probably one of my favorite parts, because I use a darker green as blush around her cheeks and her hands and her elbows, and it was a good time. I am gonna take a quick moment to talk about myself. If you like this video, like this art, like me, goodness, feel free to leave a like, a comment, or even subscribe. It would mean the world to me. If you want to see more artwork other than the stuff that I create here, I have an Instagram, which is linked down below. I have two Instagrams, actually. One is for my art, and one is, I call it my bullet journal one, but it has anything from bullet journals, books, to all about my shop, because a lot of the items in my shop are sticker sheets and stuff that I make for bullet journals. Pretty fun. I actually just listed some new stuff today, so go check it out. Next, I also have a podcast. So if you like listening to me talk and you want to listen to me talk some more, feel free to check it out. I also link it down below. My best friend and I do it. We are called the Visionaries, and we talk about anything related to fashion, culture, and art. So our latest episode that we just filmed, so it won't be out yet, we talk about gems, and I specifically talk about birthstones. And we will be talking about the Oscars and the Met Gala, and we have talked about flowers and colors and the Rococo in the past. So lots and lots and lots of interesting stuff. So feel free to check that out. Like I said, I have that linked below as well. I think that covers everything. So back to the artwork. As you can see, here I am adding in the light colored overlay, and I end up leaving the bottom not blended in then and have it kind of just the texture of the paintbrush, and I ended up really liking it. I definitely wish it would have been in the plans a little bit so I could have like wholly committed to it, but I really still liked it. Definitely the biggest thing I regret / want to go back and fix, and you know what, I still might because I still have the piece, is her sleeve. I thought about it being like light and fluttery, and then I just go back and I just go over and over it, and it ends up just looking kind of blotchy, and I don't care for it one bit, not one bit. So I definitely might have to go back over it and fix it for myself, because I've already taken pictures to post and whatnot, so everybody else will see the crappy sleeve. It'll just be me who gets to enjoy the pretty sleeve. I am thinking about making this a print though. I'm not sure how much interest I would get in it, but I think it might be. I'll definitely touch it up digitally first. So the color I chose for her hair was, I debated doing a warm color because I kind of liked the look of the really light green skin along with the almost reddish color of the burnt sienna. I decided against it because it was going to be the only warm color in the entire piece, and I didn't want it to stick out that much. So I decided against it, and I went with this really pretty turquoise color. So I am glad I did it though, because it really was lovely, and I liked doing the details on her hair. I got this tiny brush for Christmas, which I'm very, very happy about, so I was able to use it to add in some wispy little kind of flowy parts of her hair, and it turned out really great. And I loved adding the details to her face. I am glad, and I had originally thought about having her eyes open, but after getting into the painting, I'm really, really, really glad that I left her eye closed. Just with the size of the piece was just, it wouldn't have looked great. And then when I had the tiny brush, I thought about adding some details. I thought her dress needed some details. So I started doing these sweet little, branches, leaf kind of things, and I really loved those. I actually wish I would have ended up putting more in, because they were really lovely, and I liked how soft they looked. I added in some other leaves too, in a different color, which I didn't care for as much. I definitely liked the little light colored leaves instead. I do think if and when I go to make it a print, I'm going to be fixing that hand. I just quite couldn't get in there to kind of fix it all up with this little brush and just against the colors, the dark, like the light against the dark. So that will be something I would fix up later. And then with that, I get to coloring the little plants and stuff that surround her, which was fun. I was feeling a bit rushed at this point though. I was feeling like I was ready to be done because I get it, you know, you're probably ready to be done with this video if you're even still listening. And we're 26 minutes in. I was several hours into this painting and I was ready to be done. But I chose this purple for these little shrooms that are growing out of the tree, which was a great time. I loved that purple, and I actually was almost sad that I didn't try to incorporate it a little more. And then I got to work on these little fungus things. I don't know. Are they fungus? They're not. I don't think you call these mushrooms. I think you just call them fungus. Fungi. But they were fun. I had never actually drawn these before, so I felt pretty proud of myself. I was like, wow, this looks like a real forest scene. Why? Because I put purple fungus on the tree. Look at me go. Living my best life. And then I got to work on this little thingamajig. It was originally intended to be a fern, but I decided, fuck it, and just did normal random leaves instead. And the fun part of this piece, I've seen other people do this, and I thought it would be fun. I had never done this before, where they finish the painting with like tape on it. And so the edges are all crisp, but then they have things that kind of carry through the white of the border. So that's what I did. There's some things, some leaves, a rock, the mushrooms, branches on the tree. After I peel the tape off, I go back in and I color them so they're sticking out from the rest of the painting. And I thought that was so fun, and I can't wait to do more of that in the future. I'm just adding a little bits of touches up and things around. Adding some details, which always are what make the piece. I had debated originally, kind of in my head originally, I was thinking completely rendered. But as I got painting, I just realized that I didn't have the energy in me today to do a fully rendered piece. So I left it kind of cartoony. I added minor highlights and lowlights and stuff and called it a day. And here I decided to do a cute little, or attempting to do this cute little like glowy effect, almost as if they were like little lightning bugs or something, or even just magic pieces. Who knows? This is a magic forest, and this is obviously an elf of some kind, so and then very satisfyingly pulling off some of the tape. It was a bit finicky, just because the washi tape was like sticking to itself and then like ripping and whatnot. But it's always so satisfying. Tip to pulling off washi, say I'm pulling it off at a 90-degree angle. I learned that from my professor as well, to pull off your tape like that, less chances of it ripping and less chance of it ripping the paper. And so then once I got the edges pulled off and I got the clipboard out of the way, there I go painting the little leaves of that one little plant, and then the bottoms of these little mushrooms, and then there's the rock as well. That was cute. I liked the little colors of the rock. And I did notice then while I was adding these how much of a difference that underpainting made, because it was harder for me to kind of blend these colors that were painted on the straight white with the colors that had been painted on the underpainting. So they were just a touch different, but it's okay. They still look great. And there I am extending the tree and the tree branches and stuff up, because that was always a part of the plan to have like sticking out. And there is, some of them, because I kind of ended up winging the tree branches, were in different spots. So then after it dried, I went in and I erased out the pencil marks from where trees weren't put then. And then I also do, at a bit of, off screen, a bit of colored pencil detailing. Not a lot, yeah, not really a whole lot. And I use a white Posca pen then to add some white details later on as well. And by later on, I mean here within the next minute. But I added a couple little light flowy things, magic bits on the outer white part too. And then here I am with the Posca, and I add white dot inside of those just to make them more lighter, like as if they were glowing. And I finish off the fungi with some white highlights, my favorite part of things to add, some dots to the mushrooms, a bit to the other mushrooms, and then I do a bit on her as well. And the dress, I put some little flowers. I thought it needed some lighter flowers. And then she is done. I use, for on her face, white highlights, a gel pen, and there she is. I hope that you liked watching me draw this. I had a great time drawing this. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I hope that you have a great day. Bye!